Hola amigos, welcome back to 90s Punk Rock Covers. I'm pretty excited about today's video as I will be doing a gear spotlight on this guitar right here. This is a 1980 Gibson Les Paul Custom in what used to be an alpine white finish, which as you can see has now turned into a lovely TV yellow finish. I've had this guitar for a few months already, and I'm pretty sure if you guys have been following the channel that you have seen a few of the covers that I've done using this guitar. I wanted to take the time today to talk a little bit about the guitar, how I acquired it, some of the differences between modern Gibson Les Pauls compared to the Norlin era of Gibsons, such as this one, and give you guys a little bit of a playthrough and talk about the things that I like about the guitar. So let's get started. So earlier this year, I was on a trip to Seattle with my wife, and I wanted to visit some of my favorite guitar stores in the area. Thunder Road Guitars being one of them. I've been following them on Instagram for a few years now, and they always seem to carry very nice vintage guitars and new stuff. So I went in, saw this thing hanging on the wall, fell in love with it as the moment I saw it. I plugged it in, and I just knew I had to get it. Obviously, I was not really in the market to buy another guitar, but it's just one of those things that if everything clicks and the guitar speaks to you, I mean, if you can make it happen, you know, might as well just do it. Especially a vintage guitar where sometimes you don't have the luxury of playing one in person. And it's not really like buying a new guitar that 9 times out of 10, the guitar will sound good. And if you don't like it, you can always return it, worst case scenario. Vintage guitars are a little bit different. You kind of have to click and play them yourself to see if they really are what you expect the guitar to be. So luckily this guitar is all stock. One of the things that why I picked this guitar was the fact that everything was stock. Also, it's been kind of like a bucket list of mine to own a 1980s guitar. It's my birth year. And obviously I just didn't want any 1980s guitar. It had to be special, it had to speak to me. And this one basically had everything that I was looking for on a Les Paul, you know. As you guys know, I'm a huge Les Paul guy. I'm lucky enough to own 2 other customs, but a white one, I've always wanted one. And obviously, even though it's not alpine white anymore, it still looks so freaking awesome. It looks, you know, it's got the Randy Rhoads and Steve Jones vibes. So just fell in love with the guitar, and I'm so happy I'm the new caretaker of it. So for those of you who might or may know about the 1970s and 80s Les Pauls, they're considered to be called the Norlin era Gibsons, and basically in the late 60s, early 70s, Gibson got bought out by Norlin Corporation, and there's a lot of information out there online and YouTube that talk about the pros and cons of these guitars. I mean, some of them are, I guess I could say, accurate, some not. It all depends on who you talk to and what kind of information you get, but they're very polarizing. They're very divisive in the guitar community. Some people love them, some people hate them. And like I said, there are reasons for both. Obviously, as a company getting bought out by another one, you know that changes will be made. Obviously, when Norlin acquired Gibson, they were trying to expedite the production of the guitars, and some measures that they took might not have been the most smart. But then again, they were trying to mass produce guitars, trying to compete, trying to make money like most companies. So a lot of the changes that they made during those years, a lot of people dislike. But I think that some of the stuff that they implemented on the build quality of the guitars was actually pretty good and pretty smart. So we'll go over a little bit about some of the differences between what makes these guitars special as opposed to just the modern Gibson Les Paul Customs. So one of the things that they were doing back then was using what's called a pancake body, which basically meant a layer of maple in between two mahogany pieces of wood being sandwiched together. So basically that's why they call it a sandwich or a pancake body. Now this particular guitar does not have that. This is an old one-piece mahogany body with a maple cap. So a traditional Gibson Les Paul custom from the golden era or the modern ones. I believe they stopped doing the pancake bodies in the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken. So this has the more traditional body and the top. The top being a three-piece maple, which I believe that's what they were doing at the time, supposed to just a two-piece maple. Also, another thing that they were doing differently was the necks. This particular guitar has a three-piece maple neck, which in my opinion makes the guitar a little bit more stable and also makes it sound different than a regular Les Paul custom. Maple being a little bit more of a snappier kind of feel in terms of tone on the guitar, gives this guitar a little bit of a different vibe and sound than a regular custom. Also, it's a little bit denser wood, so I think they were trying to compete with Fender at the time, trying to perhaps change the sound of the original Les Paul to be more of a kind of like a bitey, more in your face kind of sound at the time, I believe. But then again, it could have been just a shortage of mahogany. Typically that's what these guitars would have, a mahogany body, but this has a three-piece maple neck, which again, I find that to be very unique and very cool. Another thing that they implemented was, as you can see here, it's a volute, which basically reinforced the neck joint with the headstock of the guitar. Gibson, especially Gibson Les Pauls, are prone to neck breakage here. So what this allowed was the guitar to be a little bit more solid, and obviously they thought about making it a little bit more structurally stable. So also, as you can see, the headstock is not your typical kind of like angle as a regular Les Paul. This is more of a flatter angle, and that also meant that the guitar would not be successful to break as a regular Gibson Les Paul. Again, not as flat as a Fender Strat or Telecaster, but much different in pitch, as you can see here. Also, the electronics at the time, everything on the guitar is stock, as I mentioned earlier. So the pickups that they were using, these are the T-tops, but they were like the late 70s T-tops before they actually changed over to the Tim Shaws in the 80s, early 80s, I believe. So these are the original T-tops. They're stamped, I believe it was early 79. So the pots on the back of the guitar are also dated 79, but the guitar was actually built and finished in February of 1980. So again, a birth year guitar. So it's very special to actually own a guitar that's almost as old as I am. So that's pretty cool. And other than that, as far as the condition, as you can see, the guitar, it's very good for what it is. Obviously, there are some worn parts. Obviously the paint being the biggest thing that you can notice, that the guitar changed from the original color, but it's got some lacquer checking. Obviously, some dings here and there. Obviously, the gold has worn off pretty much everywhere. Even the switch tip had completely turned gold. This would have normally been white or something like that, but that's the actual original switch tip, and it's completely gold. So that's pretty gnarly. The neck, it's a little bit worn, as you can see here. The paint has kind of like worn off in some sides. There's a little bit of a crack here of the paint, but again, doesn't really affect the playability of the guitar whatsoever. Some checking here. The frets are actually in very good condition. I would say the first 7 frets are a little bit worn. Maybe the guy who owned it was more of a rhythm player, I don't know, but it seems to me that that's kind of like where he stayed at, in between these frets. Anything here, it's pretty much clean. There's barely any divots or anything like that. So I don't see myself doing a fret job or anything like that anytime soon. The frets, however, are very low and very flat. I'm not sure if these were considered to be the fretless wonders, but they play so fast. They feel comfortable. I think it really represents the music at the time, as they were probably producing these guitars. They wanted faster playing guitars in the 80s and stuff like that. So definitely it's a shredder, kind of like riff type of guitar. So I love that. Sounds amazing. The pickups are not the hottest. They're very low output, but they pair really well with a high gain amp. So if I use one of my high gain amps that I have in the back, they sound really good. They complement each other really well. They don't try to fight. Sometimes I find that the hotter pickups with a hot amp, they just kind of fight each other, and you start losing some of the clarity and definition on the note. So I think the combination of having like a low output vintage style pickup with a high gain amp is the best. It's one of my favorite combinations. So tuners, again, you know, these are I believe they're the Schaller types, but they're Gibson branded, still original. The headstock, as you can see, you know, the logo is completely yellow, and it's just an amazing guitar. I'm so happy I get to own this thing. And yeah, I mean, other than that, it's basically your Gibson custom, your standard custom ebony fretboard as well. The controls are basically the same, and it's just, you know, just a rock machine. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a playthrough, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll check back with you guys in a bit. All right, guys, this is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed this little gear spotlight on the 1980 Gibson Les Paul Custom. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers.